In the farthest reaches of the galaxy, beyond the boundaries of known space, a planet drifted in the shadow of time. This planet, once teeming with life and advanced technology, was now desolate and forgotten. Its name was Zalorn, home to an alien race known as the Zalnari. Thousands of years ago, the Zalnari were a proud and thriving civilization. They had mastered the stars and built cities that gleamed with brilliant lights. They were known for their wisdom, their peaceful ways, and their incredible inventions. But all that was gone now. A disaster of unknown origin had struck their planet. A calamity that shattered their cities, disrupted their technology, and left their society in ruins. For years, the Zalnari had struggled to survive, their once great civilization crumbling into nothing more than scattered survivors. Their leaders had sent countless distress signals to other worlds, hoping for help. But each message, each plea for aid, went unanswered. Other civilizations, more powerful and far more advanced, ignored them. The Zalnari were forgotten, lost in the vastness of space. In the midst of this silence, the Zalnari had begun to lose hope. Many had given up on the idea of ever being rescued. They lived in small communities scattered across the surface of their dying planet, trying to rebuild what was lost. Some had taken to the old ways, remembering their ancestors' knowledge of the stars and using it to create small, fragile spacecraft. But these ships were no match for the dangers of deep space, and no one ever returned to them from beyond their world. The ruins of the great cities were now quiet, filled with the ghosts of a past that the Zalnari could never forget. The halls that had once echoed with laughter and debate were now still. Vast libraries of ancient knowledge sat untouched, their books covered in dust, their pages yellowed with age. The great machines that had once powered the cities were silent, their energy long gone. Yet despite everything, there were still those who held on to hope. A few leaders among the Zalnari refused to believe that their people were doomed to fade into history. They still believed that somewhere out there was a chance for their civilization to rise again. One such leader was Vexari, a wise and respected figure among the Zalnari. Vexari had spent years studying the ruins of the ancient libraries, searching for any clue, any piece of information that could help restore their lost glory. He knew that their people had the knowledge, the ability, to rebuild, if only they could find the right way forward. But each year, the messages they sent to other worlds went unanswered. The silence of space pressed on them, like a heavy weight on their hearts. The universe was vast, but to the Zalnari, it felt empty. They were alone. Vexari, like so many others, had come to the painful conclusion that no one cared enough to help them. Their fate had been sealed by the indifference of the galaxy. And then, one day, something changed. A small ship arrived in the orbit of Zalorn, so small it could hardly be seen against the backdrop of the stars. It was a human ship, a vessel from a colony that had been exploring the outer reaches of the galaxy. The humans had no idea that the Zalnari even existed. They had come to Zalorn only by chance, following the signal of an ancient beacon that had been left behind by the Zalnari long ago. When the humans first landed, they were stunned by what they found. They expected to find only ruins, nothing more. But as they explored the desolate planet, they discovered signs of life. Small, struggling communities, living among the wreckage of a once great civilization. The humans quickly realized that the Zalnari were not just survivors. They were a people with a history, a culture, and a potential that could be revived. For the first time in years, the Zalnari felt something they hadn't experienced in ages: hope. The humans, unlike the other civilizations, didn't turn their backs. They didn't see the Zalnari as a lost cause. They saw them as allies. They saw them as a people worth saving. And so, the humans began to make contact. At first, it was a slow process, words spoken across a language barrier, tentative gestures of goodwill. But with each passing day, the relationship between the humans and the Zalnari grew stronger. The humans shared their technology, their knowledge, and their friendship. They showed the Zalnari that they were not alone, that someone out there still cared about them. The Zolnari were unsure at first. They had been abandoned for so long that the idea of help seemed almost too good to be true. But Vexeri, always the visionary, saw the potential in the humans. He knew that their arrival could be the beginning of something new, something that could bring the Zolnari back from the brink of extinction. For the first time in centuries, the Zolnari had a chance to rebuild, to reclaim what they had lost. And it was all thanks to the humans, who, against the odds, had not abandoned them. The small human ship hovered above Zolnar's cracked surface, casting a long shadow over the barren landscape. The ship's crew, a group of explorers sent from a human colony far from this galaxy's core, had been on a mission to chart uncharted regions of space. They had no idea what they would find when they first came across the planet. To them, it was just another piece of forgotten space, abandoned by the greater civilizations. But they soon realized that Zolnarn was anything but ordinary. The crew, led by Captain Ilara, was cautious as they landed. They expected only dust and ruins, signs of a dead civilization. But what they found shocked them. Amid the crumbling cities and ancient relics, there were signs of life. Small, struggling communities, hidden in the shadows of what once was a thriving world. At first, the Zolnari kept their distance, unsure of the humans' intentions. They had seen visitors come and go over the centuries, most of them uninterested in offering help. But Captain Ilara and her crew weren't like the others. They didn't look at the Zolnari with pity. They didn't come to take anything. They came to learn, to understand, and to help. The humans, with their curious minds and eager hearts, wanted to know who the Zolnari were. They saw something in these ancient beings, something worth preserving. The first meeting between the two species was awkward. There was no common language and both sides were hesitant. The Zolnari were wary. They had been abandoned by the universe for so long that the idea of someone reaching out to them seemed almost impossible. Yet there was something in the humans' eyes that spoke of kindness. Captain Ilara, a woman with a calm voice and steady hands, took the lead in trying to bridge the gap. She approached a group of Zolnari cautiously, offering a gesture of peace, a hand extended in friendship. At first, the Zolnari stood frozen. They had no idea what to make of this human gesture. But then, one of the Zolnari leaders, an elder named Sara, stepped forward. She had seen many things in her long life, and something about the humans made her believe that they were different. Slowly, she raised her own hand in return, and for the first time in a long while, the air was filled with the quiet promise of hope. The humans didn't waste any time. They quickly set up a small camp near the Zolnari city ruins, bringing with them their most advanced technology. They shared food, medical supplies, and knowledge with the Zolnari. The humans, with their wealth of experience in space exploration and technology, were able to offer the Zolnari a glimpse of a future beyond the crumbled cities. They had advanced machines that could purify the air, heal the sick, and even help grow crops in the barren soil. Captain Ilara made it clear to the Zolnari that they didn't expect anything in return. They weren't here to conquer or claim Zolnarn for themselves. They simply wanted to help. They wanted to see the Zolnari thrive once more, to rebuild what was lost. Ilara's words were simple, but they carried a deep sincerity. "We are not here to take from you," she said, "but to stand with you. You are not alone anymore." And slowly, the Zolnari began to believe her. As the days passed, something remarkable happened. The Zolnari, who had once been isolated and distrustful of outsiders, started to open up. They began to work alongside the humans, sharing what little they still knew of their ancient ways. They showed the humans their old technologies, hidden deep in their ruined cities. Together, the two species began to unlock secrets long buried beneath the surface of Zolnarn. The humans, in turn, introduced the Zolnari to new ideas that they had never imagined. They taught them how to harness the power of the stars once more, how to build sustainable cities, and how to protect their planet from the dangers of the galaxy. The Zolnari were amazed by the humans' knowledge and resourcefulness. The humans, for their part, were fascinated by the Zolnari's ancient wisdom and the deep connection they had to the stars. In the evenings, as the two species sat around the campfires, they shared stories of their pasts. The Zolnari spoke of their golden age, when they ruled the stars and their cities shone like jewels. The humans shared stories of their own rise to power, of how they had faced challenges on Earth and beyond. Over time, a bond formed between them, built on mutual respect and understanding. Captain Ilara and Vexari, the leader of the Zolnari, became close allies. They spent hours discussing the future of their people. Vexari had long dreamed of the day when the Zolnari would rise from the ashes, but he had never dared to believe it could happen. Now, with the help of the humans, it seemed possible. But there was still much work to be done. The Zolnari had many wounds to heal, and their planet was far from being restored. The humans, though eager to help, knew that it would take time and patience. They couldn't fix everything overnight, but the spark of hope was there, and it was enough to keep everyone moving forward. The first steps toward a new future had been taken. The humans had arrived, and with them came a promise that the Zolnari would not be abandoned again. As days turned into weeks, the relationship between the Zolnari and humans grew. Yet, not everyone among the Zolnari was convinced that the humans had truly come to help. Some of the older leaders, particularly those who had witnessed their civilization's decline, were still cautious. They feared that the humans' offer of aid might come with hidden intentions. After all, they had been abandoned by every other race in the galaxy. What made the humans different? Vexari, the visionary leader who had seen the potential of the humans, spent much of his time working closely with Captain Ilara. Together, they began to forge a path forward for their people, using the knowledge of both species, but not everyone shared Vexari's optimism. One such individual was Kara, an elder of the Zolnari Council. Sara had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, and she wasn't so quick to trust outsiders, no matter how kind or helpful they seemed. How do we know they are not here to take what little we have left? Sara asked one evening, as she met with other skeptical leaders of the Zolnari. They come to us in peace now, but what will they want in return? Our resources, our technology. Vexari sighed, rubbing his temples. He had heard these concerns many times before, but they still weighed heavily on his heart. He understood their fear. He shared it. Yet he believed that the humans were different. They were not like the other races that had ignored or exploited the Zolnari. He had seen the sincerity in Captain Ilara's eyes, heard the truth in her words. The humans had not come for power or riches. They had come to help, to rebuild. We cannot remain hidden forever, Vexari said calmly. The universe is vast, and we cannot survive alone. We must take this chance, or we will fade into nothingness. But Xara was not so easily swayed. We have survived for centuries without the help of others, she replied. Why should we trust these strangers now? Vexari's voice grew firmer. Because they are not strangers, Xara. They are our allies, and without their help, we may not survive. As tensions grew within the Zolnari leadership, Captain Ilara continued to work tirelessly to ease the concerns of the Zolnari. She understood their fears. She had seen them in her own people when they first set out to explore unknown regions of space. But she also knew that without trust, no alliance could succeed. And so, she did her best to build bridges between the two species, one conversation at a time. She spent hours speaking with Chara, trying to show the elder that the humans had no hidden agenda. They weren't there to take anything from the Zolnari. They were there to share what they had, to offer a future of cooperation and mutual benefit. I understand your fears, Captain Ilara said gently during one of their talks. The universe is not always kind, and you have been through much. But we do not ask for anything in return. We ask only that you allow us to help. Sara looked at Ilara for a long moment, studying the human woman. And if we do not accept your help? Ilara paused. She had known this question was coming, but it was still hard to answer. Then I fear that you will continue to face the same isolation, the same struggle, and we will not be able to stand by and watch you fade away." There was silence between them, heavy with the weight of history and pain. Finally, Sarah spoke again, her voice softer now. "And if we accept your help, what then?" "Then we build a future together," Ilara said with a smile. "One where the Zolnari are not alone, where we can work side by side to restore what was lost. We can learn from each other, share our strengths, and together we can accomplish things neither of us could do alone." Sarah nodded slowly. There was still doubt in her heart, but she saw the sincerity in Ilara's eyes. Perhaps, just perhaps, the humans were telling the truth. Perhaps they were not the enemy, but the key to their survival. Over the next few days, more and more Zolnari leaders began to come around to the idea of working with the humans. Vexari's vision of a united future started to take shape, even as some of the older leaders held back, reluctant to fully embrace the new alliance. The humans continued their work, teaching the Zolnari how to use their technology to rebuild and heal. Slowly, the Zolnari cities began to show signs of life once more. The skies above Zalorn, once dark and silent, began to hum with the promise of something new. But even as progress was made, the uneasy alliance remained. There were still those among the Zolnari who whispered of distrust and fear, who questioned whether the humans could truly be trusted. And there were still moments of tension, when old wounds from the past seemed to surface. Despite these challenges, Captain Ilara and Vexari remained determined. They knew that the road ahead would not be easy. They would face more doubts, more resistance, but they also knew that together, they could overcome anything. And so, despite the lingering distrust, the first steps of a new partnership were taken. The Zolnari had begun to open their hearts and minds to the humans, and the humans, in turn, had shown that they were not just visitors, but friends. The future, once clouded with uncertainty, now held the promise of hope. It was a beginning. Fragile, yes, but a beginning nonetheless. For weeks, the Zolnari and humans worked together, side by side, building a future that neither had ever imagined. The once silent cities of Zalorn began to hum with life again. Children played in the streets where ruins had once stood, and farmers, guided by human technology, grew crops in soil that had long been barren. The humans taught the Zolnari how to tap into the energy of their planet's dying resources, and the Zolnari, in turn, shared their ancient knowledge of the stars. Slowly but surely, a new era was beginning. But as the two species worked in harmony, a dark shadow loomed on the edge of the galaxy, threatening to undo everything they had worked so hard for. News arrived one day, carried on a signal from a distant relay station. It was a warning. An old enemy was returning. The Zorvok, a ruthless alien empire that had once tried to conquer the Zolnari, had reappeared in the region. The Zorvok were known for their militaristic ways, their obsession with power, and their utter disregard for the well-being of others. They had left the Zolnari in ruins long ago, and now they were back, hungry for control of Zalorn's resources. Captain Ilara was the first to hear the news. She stood on the balcony of the human camp, staring out at the horizon. The twin moons of Zalorn cast a soft light across the landscape, but Ilara's heart was heavy. She knew that the Zolnari, despite their resilience, were still rebuilding. They weren't ready for war. They needed time, more time than the universe was willing to give. As she turned to face Vexari, who had joined her on the balcony, she could see the worry in his eyes. The Zolnari had worked so hard to reclaim what they had lost. It was all in danger now. "The Zorvok have returned," Ilara said softly. "They want to take everything we've helped rebuild." Vexari clenched his fists. "I feared this day would come," he said. "The Zorvok never forget their enemies. They will not stop until they have what they want." Ilara nodded. "We can't let them destroy everything. We have to fight." Vexari's mind raced. The Zolnari were not a warlike people. They had never been prepared for something like this. They had no standing army, no advanced weapons. But what they did have was knowledge, wisdom, and a new alliance with the humans. "We must defend our home," Vexeri said, his voice steady now. "We may not have the resources the Zorvok have, but we have something stronger. Our unity. Together, humans and Zalnari, we can stop them." And so, the humans and Zalnari began to prepare for the worst. The Zalnari shared their ancient knowledge of warfare, strategies that had been used in their earlier days of prosperity, and the humans taught them how to use their advanced technology in battle. Together, they worked to create defensive systems, fortify their cities, and train soldiers. Though the two species had been working together for a while, this was the first time they faced a true test of their alliance. The humans knew that the Zorvok were formidable opponents. They had faced many battles in their history and had survived. But the Zalnari had never known war on such a scale. Captain Ilara was determined to make sure the Zalnari were not alone in this fight. She gathered her crew and began to organize a defense strategy that would protect both the humans and the Zalnari. She sent word back to the human colonies, calling for reinforcements. There was no time to waste. As the days passed, tension filled the air. The Zalnari, who had once been cautious and hesitant, now began to show their strength. They worked tirelessly alongside the humans, building walls, setting up defenses, and preparing for the inevitable confrontation. It was clear that the Zorvok would not simply give up. They were coming, and they were coming with all their might. Vexeri, once hesitant to trust humans, now saw them as true allies. The humans were not just here to help. They were here to fight alongside the Zalnari. And the Zalnari, for the first time in centuries, felt like they weren't alone in the universe. They had partners in this battle, partners who would stand by them no matter the odds. The day the Zorvok arrived, their massive ships appeared on the horizon like dark clouds, blocking out the light of the twin moons. Their warships, sleek and menacing, descended upon Zalorn with terrifying speed. The humans and Zalnari were ready, though none could deny the fear that gripped their hearts. The battle began almost immediately. The Zorvok launched their first wave of attacks, powerful and relentless. Their weapons were deadly, and their tactics were brutal. But the humans and Zalnari fought back with everything they had. They used the terrain to their advantage, setting traps and launching counterattacks from unexpected angles. The humans' advanced weaponry helped, but it was the Zalnari's ancient strategies and the unity between the two species that gave them hope. As the battle raged on, Vexeri fought alongside Captain Ilara, leading his people with a strength he had never known before. The Zorvok were fierce, but the Zalnari and humans were stronger together. The future of Zalorn, of the Zalnari, and of this newfound alliance hung in the balance. But one thing was certain: they would not give up without a fight. The Zorvok were relentless. Their ships darkened the sky, and their weapons hammered Zalorn's surface with unyielding force. The ground trembled beneath the assault, and the once peaceful cities now echoed with the sounds of battle. Despite the desperation of the situation, Captain Ilara and Vexeri remained determined. The two species had worked so hard to rebuild Zalorn, and they would not let it fall to the Zorvok without a fight. The first wave of Zorvok soldiers descended on Zalorn's surface in their massive dropships. Their armor was thick and their weapons deadly. They moved swiftly, like a well-oiled machine, with no care for the lives they destroyed in their path. But the humans and Zalnari, though outnumbered, fought back fiercely. Vexeri stood at the front of the defense, his eyes scanning the battlefield. He had never fought like this before. In his youth, the Zalnari had been scholars and explorers, not soldiers. But now, with the humans at their side, the Zalnari showed a strength they hadn't known they had. They knew their planet, its hills and valleys, its cities and caves. They used this knowledge to fight back in ways the Zorvok hadn't expected. Captain Ilara, commanding her crew from the human side, was just as determined. She had fought in countless battles before, but this was different. This wasn't just about survival. This was about saving a people, a world that deserved a future. She watched as the Zorvok pushed forward, their war machines stomping toward the city's outer walls. With a calm voice, she gave orders to her team. "Focus fire on their lead ship," she commanded. "If we can disable it, we'll slow them down. Get the Zalnari snipers to target their weaker points." Her words were sharp and clear. She had no time to second-guess herself. The fate of Zalorn rested in the balance, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. As the humans and Zalnari worked together, a surprising thing happened. The Zorvok began to falter. Their usual arrogance seemed to wane as they realized their enemies were not as weak as they had believed. The humans' technology, combined with the Zalnari's ancient knowledge, created an unexpected synergy that gave the invaders more resistance than they had anticipated. But just as hope began to rise, a new challenge emerged. A massive Zorvok war machine appeared on the horizon, far bigger than anything the Zalnari or humans had faced. It was a behemoth of metal and firepower, and it stomped toward the heart of the city, crushing everything in its path. "We need to take that thing down," Ilara said, her voice grim. Vexari nodded. "We can't let it reach the city center. It will destroy everything." The two leaders quickly devised a plan. The Zalnari, with their deep knowledge of the terrain, would lure the war machine into a narrow valley where its size and strength would work against it. The humans, armed with advanced explosives, would then set traps along the valley, hoping to disable the war machine before it could do too much damage. The plan was risky, but it was their best hope. As the war machine advanced, Vexari led a group of Zalnari soldiers in a daring move. They fired warning shots, drawing the massive machine away from the city. The Zorvok inside the war machine roared with anger, firing back. But Vexari and his team were quick, using the planet's natural defenses to stay one step ahead. As the war machine followed the Zalnari into the valley, Captain Ilara's team set the final trap. The moment the war machine entered the narrowest part of the valley, they triggered the explosives. The ground shook as a series of blasts rocked the landscape, creating a massive wall of debris and fire. The war machine staggered, its momentum halted, but it didn't fall. It roared, trying to push through the rubble, its weapons firing wildly. "We need to finish this," Ilara said, her heart racing. She signaled to her team to fire the final round of explosives. The Zalnari snipers took aim, targeting the machine's weak spots, the joints and engine parts. It wasn't an easy shot, but they had no other choice. With a coordinated effort, they fired. The explosion was immense. The war machine trembled, and with a final roar, it collapsed to the ground in a heap of twisted metal. The battle was far from over, but one major threat had been neutralized. The humans and Zalnari cheered, but the victory was short-lived. The Zorvok, despite losing their war machine, were relentless. They regrouped and began to launch a second wave. This time, however, they had underestimated the combined forces of the humans and Zalnari. As the battle raged on, Vexari and Captain Ilara remained at the heart of the defense, leading their people with courage. The humans had brought their technology, but it was the Zalnari who brought their spirit. Together, they were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for a new beginning. The struggle was far from over, but the humans and Zalnari had proven one thing. They were a force to be reckoned with, and as long as they stood together, they would not fall. The battle for Zalorn had raged for days, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The once vibrant cities, where humans and Zalnari had worked side by side, now stood in ruins. The air was thick with smoke, and the sound of explosions still echoed across the landscape. Despite the relentless attacks by the Zorvok, the humans and Zalnari refused to give up. The alliance between the two species had become their greatest strength, and it was the only thing keeping hope alive. Captain Ilara and Vexari stood together on a hill overlooking the battlefield. They were both tired, their faces marked with dirt and exhaustion, but their determination had never been stronger. The Zorvok were powerful, But the humans and Zalneri had something they didn't: a shared belief in the future they could build together. "We can't let them win," Ilara said, her voice firm. "We've come too far." Vexari nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. "We will not let Zalorn fall. This planet, these people, they are worth fighting for." But even as they spoke, the Zorvok continued to press forward. Their numbers seemed endless, and their war machines, though damaged, were still a powerful threat. The human and Zalneri forces had held their ground, but they were running out of time. Supplies were dwindling, and morale was beginning to falter. Something had to change. Captain Ilara had a plan. She had noticed something in the Zorvok's tactics, an inconsistency, a weakness in their strategy. The Zorvok were focusing all their energy on the cities, ignoring the forests and mountains that surrounded the planet's surface. Ilara knew that if they could strike at the heart of the Zorvok command, they might be able to disrupt the invasion. But it would be a dangerous mission, one that required stealth and precision. "I have an idea," Ilara said, turning to Vexari. "We need to hit them where it hurts. We can't fight them head-on. They're too strong. But we can strike their command center. If we can take it out, we might be able to break their momentum." Vexari frowned, considering the risk. "You're talking about infiltrating their lines, cutting through their defenses, and taking out their leaders. It's a dangerous mission." "I know," Ilara replied. "But it's our best shot. We can't win this battle by fighting on the front lines. We need to hit them at their core, disrupt their command, and create confusion. It's the only way we can turn the tide." Vexari took a deep breath. He understood the gravity of the situation. The Zalneri had never been a warrior race, and they didn't have the resources to fight a war of attrition. But the humans had shown them that sometimes victory didn't come from overwhelming force. It came from strategy, from outsmarting the enemy. "We'll do it," Vexari said, his voice resolute. "We'll strike at their command center and take them down from within." With that, Ilara and Vexari began to gather a team. The mission was dangerous, but they knew it was their only hope. A small group of human and Zalneri soldiers would infiltrate the heart of the Zorvok forces, disable their communication systems, and take out their leaders. It was a risky plan, but it was the only one that could turn the tide of the war. As the team prepared for the mission, the atmosphere was tense. The humans and Zalneri knew that they were about to take a leap of faith. If they succeeded, they could break the Zorvok's hold on the planet and turn the war in their favor. If they failed, the consequences would be disastrous. The team set out under the cover of night, moving swiftly and quietly through the forest. The Zorvok had set up camps near the mountains, but their defenses were weak in the dense trees. The humans and Zalneri used this to their advantage, slipping past the outer guards and moving closer to the Zorvok command center. As they approached the heart of the Zorvok forces, the tension grew. Ilara and Vexari led the group, their eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. The Zorvok had set up advanced sensors and patrols, but the combined skills of the humans and Zalneri allowed them to remain undetected. At last, they reached the command center, an imposing structure made of black metal, guarded by dozens of Zorvok soldiers. It was well protected, but not invincible. Ilara and Vexari signaled for the team to take their positions. They had to move quickly. Using a combination of human technology and Zalneri tactics, they disabled the perimeter defenses and sneaked inside the command center. The Zorvok soldiers were unaware of their presence, allowing the team to infiltrate deeper into the heart of their operation. Once inside, they split up into smaller groups, each tasked with destroying a key component of the Zorvok's communication network. Ilara and Vexari worked together to reach the command room, where the Zorvok leaders were coordinating their attack on Zalorn. They were moments away from completing their mission when the alarms went off. The Zorvok had detected the intruders. "We've been found," Ilara said, her voice tense. "Move fast. We need to finish this now." With the Zorvok closing in, the team worked quickly. They set the final explosives, ensuring that the command center's communication systems would be permanently disabled. As the countdown began, Ilara and Vexuri made their way to the exit. The plan had worked. They had taken down the heart of the Zorvok invasion. But as they ran for cover, the explosion behind them shook the ground, sending a wave of shock through the Zorvok forces. The battle for Zalorn had reached a turning point. The explosion from the Zorvok command center sent shockwaves across the battlefield. For a moment, everything stood still. The Zorvok forces, caught off guard and disoriented, hesitated. The loss of their command center was a blow they hadn't anticipated, and the confusion among their ranks gave the humans and Zalnari the opening they desperately needed. Captain Ilara and Vexari, along with their team, raced through the forest to a safe location, their hearts pounding. The mission had been a success, but they knew the battle was far from over. The Zorvok were powerful, and they would regroup quickly. The time to strike was now, before the enemy could reorganize. Back at the human and Zalnari base, the news spread like wildfire. The Zorvok's communication systems were down, their leaders in disarray, and their forces scattered. It was a small victory, but it was the first real sign of hope in days. The Zalnari, who had once been unsure of their ability to defend their world, now stood with newfound confidence. The humans, too, felt the surge of hope. They had proven that together, they were a force the Zorvok could not easily defeat. Vexari stood with Ilara, watching the horizon. The sky above them was still dark with the smoke of war, but there was a glimmer of light on the horizon. The twin moons of Zalorn cast a soft glow over the land, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there was always hope. "We did it," Ilara said, her voice filled with relief. "We struck at the heart of their invasion." Vexari nodded, though his expression remained serious. "This isn't over yet. The Zorvok will regroup, and we'll have to face them again. But we've shown them that we won't back down." The humans and Zalnari quickly began to organize their forces. With the Zorvok command in chaos, they launched a series of counterattacks. The Zorvok, now disorganized and uncertain, struggled to respond. The humans and Zalnari took advantage of every weakness, pushing the invaders back with a strength they hadn't known they possessed. The battle raged on for days, but with each passing hour, the Zorvok's grip on Zalorn weakened. Their war machines, once unstoppable, now seemed clumsy and disjointed. The combined might of the humans and Zalnari, their unity and determination, was proving to be the key to victory. In the final hours of the conflict, the Zorvok forces, exhausted and demoralized, began to retreat. They had underestimated the resolve of the humans and Zalnari. They had come to Zalorn thinking it would be an easy conquest, but they had learned the hard way that the inhabitants of this world would not be ruled. As the last of the Zorvok ships fled from Zalorn's atmosphere, a cheer rose up from the human and Zalnari forces. The battle was won, and the planet was safe. The cost had been high, but the victory was sweet. Zalorn would survive, and its people, both human and Zalnari, had forged a bond that could never be broken. Captain Ilara and Vexari stood side by side, watching as the last of the Zorvok ships disappeared into the distance. The sky, once dark and filled with smoke, now shone with the light of a new day. The twin moons of Zalorn still hung in the sky, a reminder of the challenges they had faced, and of the future they had built together. "This is just the beginning," Vexari said, his voice filled with determination. "We have a long road ahead of us, but now we have hope. Together, we can rebuild Zalorn and create a future where both our species can thrive." Ilara smiled, her heart filled with pride. "Yes, we can. We've proven that when we stand together, there's nothing we can't overcome." And so, the humans and Zalnari began the work of rebuilding. The scars of war would take time to heal, but the bond between the two species was stronger than ever. Together, they began to rebuild Zalorn, not just as a planet, but as a symbol of hope unity, and the power of cooperation. The battle for Zalorn had been fierce, but in the end, it had shown one simple truth. When humanity and its allies stand together, they can overcome any challenge. And as the sun rose over Zalorn's horizon, it heralded the dawn of a new era, a time of peace, prosperity, and endless possibilities for both humans and Zalnari.